Welcome, everybody. We are, 2 minutes late? It works. So I am just showing we are meeting on now every fourth Tuesday of every month. And it's every month at the same time, 8 o'clock in Israel. Thank you for joining, because I know that for you in Georgia, for example, it's 10 p.m. So thank you so much. I will play a new video I have for you. The sound, wow, okay. The video was working. Okay.
VUCA is an acronym that stands for volatile, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It is a combination of qualities that show the nature of certain difficult situations or conditions. We are staying in VUCA world, and the best example is COVID-19. Volatility recognizes steady and rapid changes. It shows that the business environment keeps changing at a rapid speed, so the leader needs to adhere to the steady changing characteristic and change the plan whenever needed. Uncertainty refers to the state of being unaware of the happenings in the future. It shows that any change can happen in a business environment, and therefore, the leader needs to be prepared for the situation and how to tackle the problem. Complexity is the state of being intricated or detailed. Complexity in the VUCA approach of leadership highlights the number of issues and factors that need to be taken care of before proceeding with further steps. Ambiguity asks a leader to be flexible and adaptive to any change that may occur in the future. It draws the leader's scrutiny towards the condition where there is a lack of clarity or understanding.
So from the last time, we worked on the logo, and we found that this way is more appropriate because it shows that it's the old VUCA on which there is a new dimension of the hyperconnectivity. The old VUCA was created in 1987 during Cold War, and it was during the time that Russia was putting missiles on Cuba, 40 miles from United States. So it was created by the US Army War College, and the same element of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, VUCA, are the same today. But since COVID, they have been enhanced by hyperconnectivity because everybody was home and using their computer. But the hyperconnectivity is also the problem that people are less social. But in the meantime, we have the war in Ukraine. And with the war in Ukraine, we have exactly the same situation, destabilization and anxiety in the world, that through the Cold War. The difference is we have a Cold War all over the world, plus an active war in Ukraine, in Israel, in different places. So that's why for communication, we keep VUCA plus H. Okay. So the agenda today will be the video, but new participating member. Do we have any new member today? I am not sure. I think Manana, you spoke last time? Okay. So then we can skip that page. So every month we have a different speaker. Last time we had the language of resilience with Manana. This time it's biofeedback validated technology with Dr. Wallach. By the way, I think it's the first time Dr. Wallach is coming, so we will give him a little bit more time to introduce himself. Then next meeting will be about positive parenting and education, Salome. And next one will be neuroscience with Dr. Leifman. The subject is very detailed, very complex, very in-depth, and he will have 30 minutes to present because that's really something that many people don't necessarily understand easily. And then we will have Dr. Duncan with multisensory health and well-being intervention. From there, we will complete the program. So every new member speak about yourself. that will apply to Dr. Wallach.
Okay, my name is Joseph Wallach. I'm a clinical psychologist. I actually joined last time, but I think we skipped this. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm originally from New York. I did my doctorate in Chicago at the Illinois Institute of Technology. And I stayed there after I finished my PhD. I continued working in the Chicago area, where I also worked as a postdoctoral fellow. I also was working at as an adjunct faculty member at the Adler University and the Hebrew Theological College, which is now part of Touro. And so I've split between my areas of focus of general mental health as well as medical issues. I worked with chronic pain, vision impairment, and other complicated medical issues, including cancer and the treatment, the psychological side of treatment, and helping people through a variety of health issues, as well as typical issues with anxiety, stress, depression, and really blending in the biopsychosocial model, which really fits in very well with a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. So we used tools, and I was trained in tools like biofeedback and relaxation therapies to give people increased control over their physiology, increased self-awareness, and blending that into therapy as well. In Israel, I work for one of the insurance companies, Maccabi Insurance, and I also work independently. And I find a few hours every week to try to work with the Mental Wellness Society, to be part of the research program, to be involved with setting up research on technologies and other tools that can be useful to improve wellness around the world, not just to teach people to be reactive to problems, but to become proactive to promote their well-being, which is very tied to resilience.
Thank you, Dr. Wallach. Anna, did you present yourself last time?
Yes, I had.
Okay. So, I think you did. Okay. No, I'm asking that because as we are recording, through the recording, we are able to have a little presentation of everybody. So, Salome?
Hello, dear members. So I will present you the list of people who registered for our group. Currently, we have 28 members from different countries. Eight of them are from RESWELL, and we're waiting for the response of 3 people. As you can see it on the slides, and also as you can see based on flags, there are representatives of different countries in our group, which is really good. Also in terms of practical goals of our group, because we can apply for some grants based on some of the participants being from European Union. And so you can see the details on this slide. Next slide, please. So currently we have 9 VUCAH groups. And so first one concerns monitoring of VUCAH situation in Israel and sharing best practices and innovative approaches. Also, we are working on creating a language of resilience, psychology, brain and neuroscience, education, social emotional resilience, validating innovative technology and methods for resilience to VUCAH, corporate resilience, strategic societal communication and social media, as well as health and well-being. And currently we are still looking for the lead for new economical models in the VUCAH world. You can see the list of people leading each of the groups. But in case you have someone you can recommend for the last group presented on the slide in red, you can contact us and recommend several professionals in this field. Next slide, please. So as for your project contributions, we want to know on what topic you plan to work, who are the members of your project, who is the lead, and so what is the time frame of your contribution? So when do you plan, or what your milestones are in this case? And if you have any questions that you would like to discuss in relation to your project, please feel free to discuss it. And Dr. Mayer, I believe you will continue now.
Yeah, we'll introduce Dr. Wallach. We just spoke 2 minutes ago. So, Joe, floor is yours. You tell me when to change the slide, okay?
I will. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about biofeedback and other validated technologies and how we can try to use them to aid with the resilience. Next slide. So first, I think we have to understand a bit more about VUCA. We've seen this slide before, but just going over how volatility can impact people on a psychological impact in terms of anxiety, concentration impacts, restlessness, irritability. On a physiological level, we also see increased heart rate, blood pressure, increased muscle tension, other cardiovascular issues, and other health-related problems. With uncertainty, we also see anxiety, a sense of powerlessness, difficulty with decision-making, and difficulty planning. And then looking at the physiological side, we have, I guess, increased state of alertness. So people are hyper-aroused. Persistent activation of the sympathetic nervous system, again, increased stress response. And tying into that both on a physiological level, increased secretion of hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, as well as elevated states of muscle tension, high blood pressure. With complexity, we can see impacts of cognitive overload. People are trying to handle many things at the same time. They're more exhausted, they're not sleeping, increased burnout, and they have increased difficulty with making prioritization or prioritizing their different tasks, difficulty maintaining their focus. So they can almost look like they have ADHD, perhaps. On a physiological level, again, fatigue, sleep disruption, increased susceptibility to illness, so perhaps reduced immune function. With ambiguity, we see increased confusion, indecision, lack of clarity, heightened stress, frustration, overall mental well-being being negatively impacted. And so whether they're feeling more anxious or depressed, in general, their overall mental well-being is reduced, as well as physiological effects like increased cortisol, increased challenges to cardiovascular issues, impact on their immune system and metabolism. So perhaps they're having a negative impact on their metabolism, either perhaps by slowing down metabolism or changes in metabolic function. And with hyperconnectedness, we have also information overload. People are getting too much news. They're seeing many more things, which leads to increases in stress and anxiety, difficulty maintaining their work-life balance. They're trying to handle multiple things, and there are more things that are going on, both at work and at home. Increased exposure to traumatic content. Go back a slide, please. Which can lead to increased symptoms of PTSD, which ties in also on the physiological side. Again, as well as disrupted sleep patterns. So there's a lot of overload and a lot of overlap between the various physiological and psychological impacts of VUCA on a person, both in their psychological as well as their physiological impact. Next slide. So here we can see with two interesting images. On the left-hand side of your screen, you see how the brain responds when we see words, hear words, when we generate and when we speak words. We have different parts of our brain that light up, which means that they're engaged in that process. Then on the right-hand side of the screen, you also see how the brain responds to stress. So on the far right-hand side, we actually see the response of a person who has poor coping skills, okay, and how their brain pattern is lighting up, and how that differs dramatically from the left side of that same image of the resilient coping, where we see more activation in the frontal and also actually in the back of the head, in the occipital region. There's increased activation versus just on the sides, okay? So we're seeing different parts of the brain that are lighting up depending on the person's coping style and whether they're resilient or not. And so what we want to see, go back a slide, please. What we want to see is looking at I guess, a multisensory synergistic approach or a holistic approach with treatment and with research, looking at research, education, training, metacognition, which is thinking about thinking, positive psychology, using iconic communication styles, different types of therapies, including resonance therapies, and understanding that it all correlates, and understanding also that adversity does not automatically have to mean helplessness. Next slide. So I wanted to go through a very brief history of biofeedback and neurofeedback. So here, just very briefly, we see on the left-hand side of your screen a more modern version of biofeedback where a person has a sensor that is connected, in this case, to their wrist, where we can look at their heart rate and heart functioning. We can look at heart rate variability. We can look at other measures like EEG, which would be on the right-hand side, where we have sensors connected to a person's head. Next slide. So with biofeedback, the general idea is that we are providing a method of recording, monitoring, and also giving information to an individual about what is happening in their body. And the benefit of this is that when a person has that information, they can perhaps learn to control what is happening inside of their own body. And we can use behavioral conditioning like operant rewards to change these signals. And with biofeedback, generally, we're talking about peripheral biofeedback measures like heart rate or heart rate variability, electromyography or EMG, galvanic skin response, which is also known as ectodermal response, or skin conductance, are all the same. But we're looking at the release of sweat and how conductive the surface of the skin is. We can look at measures of respiration. Whereas with neurofeedback, we are looking directly at correlates of brain activity, where we're taking a recording from the surface of the skin using EEG data. And we have evidence for a variety of types of biofeedback, including for ADHD, anxiety, essential hypertension, which is a type of cardiovascular disease, Raynaud's syndrome, which is related to peripheral vasoconstriction, as well as seizure disorders. So there are many types of biofeedback and neurofeedback that have already been examined in research. Next slide. And there are additional technologies that we can blend in with biofeedback or into therapy, things like using the binaural pulse modulator, the BPM, the RESIMAX for a vibrational, which is both of these use resonance. We can also use sound and light. So a variety of technologies that are being used and can be used in therapeutic approaches, but also with the goal of helping to increase resilience. Next slide. So the binaural pulse modulator uses sound, but specifically using two different frequencies that are presented to an individual, one in each ear. And the way that we understand it is that the brain makes sense by hearing these two different frequencies. It finds the middle frequency, okay? And the binaural pulse modulator, okay, creates these sounds that can be adjusted by each individual to find the frequency that works for them. And it ranges from 0 to 350 hertz. Okay, so we're talking about frequency of the sound. And we have data from the research that has been done that indicates changes in self-report on measures of stress, anxiety, and PTSD. Next slide. Additionally, with the BPM, we also have changes in how the brain lights up before and after treatment, and looking at 3 different individuals that also showed these changes on self-report. We also had changes in how the brain was communicating. So the brain was lighting up significantly differently on fMRI, as well as on EEG, which is not on this slide. Next slide. We then can get to the RESIMAX, which is another form of using frequency. Here we're using a vibration for stimulation. It's a non-invasive. And specifically for psychological factors, we're dealing with stimulation of the vagal nerve. And it was demonstrated to show relief for pain for both headache and menstrual pain. And what is interesting here is we were finding relief for people who had previously been treated without significant benefit on medication, or where they had at the point where the medications were no longer providing them significant benefit. And so we were able to provide a reduction in pain to people that is beyond what was allowed through traditional medical models as to a high degree, where people are getting benefit where either similar to the medication had been providing them, or even after the medications no longer worked for them. Next slide. And we can combine these techniques, both the BPM and the RESIMAX, where we can use sound and vibration to stimulate, to provide an individual. And here we see Dr. Scott Duncan using these two in the M3 Center, where he is helping a person who has significant discomfort and he's using the RESWELL actually on the back of their neck, okay, as well as the person at the same time is listening to the binaural frequency using the BPM to reduce the level of discomfort by focusing on a positive image while they are listening to the frequency that was enhancing that positive image. Next slide. We can then get into music or sound, which is also a type of frequency, okay? And brainwaves which are associated with the nervous system, and particularly with the vagus nerve, can be used to help to regulate and even to rebalance or to restate the homeostatic system. And so we're listening to music that is associated with certain patterns of brainwave activity. For example, if a person is using alpha, they will help to get calm, okay? And if they're using theta or delta, they will become deeply relaxed, and with delta even fall asleep. And if the person is using a beta wave signal, they can be focused. And if they use a combination of alpha and beta, they can be calm and focused. So the idea here is we can use different aspects of sound and music, which is available not just to the individuals who are members of the Mental Wellness Society, but really it was provided to anybody with, I think we had up to 8 million downloads available to us to use music during this time of high stress, to allow people to find ways to help them get focused or calm, to help them go to sleep, which can significantly negatively impact their health and well-being. And so here we can really target a combination of both their sympathetic and their parasympathetic nervous system, and we can find a way to provide them some relief. Next slide. A new area and a growing area of research over the last decade is using photobiomodulation or light therapy. And here we see an example of a cap which is also doing an EEG recording, but also can provide red light or low infrared frequency lights aimed at the head, and it can be specifically targeted to areas of the brain that need to be corrected. And so they can target that based on a brain map from the QEEG data that is being recorded. And we can see that we can then use that to adjust and alter and treat an individual. Next slide. And so with the photobiomodulation, or PBM, and I find that these acronyms are going to be confusing because we had BPM before and PBM now. But this red and near infrared light can be used to stimulate, heal, regenerate, and even protect tissue that has been injured or is degenerating, and has also been shown to help reduce inflammation where there's risk of death, of cellular death to the tissue. And this can be done in using this cap, but it can also be done in other modes of stimulation using the red or near infrared light. So photobiomodulation is not just for your brain, but it has been shown to be beneficial for reducing pain, increasing functional range of motion and activity. One study was specifically looking at the shoulder motion, range of motion in the shoulder. And there is a growing area for research and interest and clinical applications for this. And I believe that these can be combined with other tools as well. Below you see just 3 of the many citations that are available for photobiomodulation. And we see them going back to 2022, which is not so long ago, but 2020, 2016. So this is not something that's brand new, but it's still a new area for research. Next slide. So what would be the benefits of using some of these technological tools for resilience, particularly in our VUCA world? First of all, many of these tools, not all, but many of them are small, portable, and have demonstrated clinical results. And so if we can provide relief to individuals where we can reduce the level of distress, and we can provide them at the same time as using perhaps the Mind Evoke cards, where we're training an individual to think better, to think more productively, to look for the solutions, to not just stare at the problem because you end up where you look. We can provide significant changes in how a person is experiencing. And as I said before, being in a situation of high distress does not mean that we have to end up in a state of helplessness. So when we're successful in navigating difficult situations and using these tools may help us to be calmer, we might be able to develop a sense of resilience. We can also see reductions in pain, stress, and heart rate. We can see improvements in range of motion and activity tolerance. And these changes will improve a person's sense of internal locus of control okay, and feeling embodied or able-bodied, which will increase their sense of self-direction and and their resilience and their ability to take action in a situation which is challenging. Initially, as I believe with all therapies, they should likely be clinician guided, but with many of these tools, the goal would be able to allow a person to have self-directed and self-managed therapeutic use of their tools. For example, with the binaural pulse modulator or with RESWELL, a person can use them initially in the office I'd been seeing with Scott Duncan in the picture there where a person is using both. But ultimately, a person would be able to use them on their own and at their own home, and perhaps even when they're out and about. The reduced levels of distress and pain can allow a person to shift also from seeking treatment to also more management and even to prevention. So if a person is able to avoid having exacerbations of pain, if they're able to feel that they're in control, even when they're doing things that are challenging, like doing exercises for people who are in chronic pain, doing exercise is very important. And having something that allows you to do that where you feel that it's not going to exacerbate your pain as much, or where you can recover more quickly, will lead to increased compliance. Additionally, that shift from feeling helpless and out of control to feeling internal control, to feeling hopeful, feeling a sense of ability to cope, to manage, okay? These are signs and indicators for resilience. Next slide. And so these are, I think, a slide that we've seen before, but the idea of resilience is to not think like we're a victim, okay? And to not feel like a victim. Resilience is the resumption of new developments after a trauma or after a challenging situation. It is not to negatively resist, but rather to choose to adapt, to bounce back. So it's not just overcoming, it's also recovery. Okay, so overcoming is part of it, getting through is part of it, but it's also the choice of adaptation, of survival, of thriving. And when we look at calamity, oftentimes we focus on, well, during the calamity, the goal is just to survive, just to make it through. But when we think about what will be after, okay, for example, in Ukraine or in Israel currently or during COVID, when we think about what life will be like afterwards and what we would like to do afterwards, we start looking forward and we can make plans. That allows us to reconnect to a sense of positive thinking, to looking ahead to a future, which can instill a sense of hope. When we take action to help other people, or when we get together with other people, those engage our sense of well-being. And so in doing those types of behaviors, helping others or talking with others or getting together with others, that allows us to feel connected. In terms of what we allow to enter us into our mind, into our soul, into our heart, okay, or into our psyche or into our emotions, you know, we can choose to allow something to affect us, or we can choose to acknowledge that we are getting through something, but that it doesn't permanently damage us. It doesn't permanently stay with us. Okay, we got through it. Our past is behind us. We can start to focus on solutions. Okay, we can focus on our destination. We are able to take control and take action again. We can learn and we can train ourselves, okay, to be prepared to respond to challenging situations. So we can be resilient, we can be prepared, and we can teach ourselves different methods of doing that. And when we stay calm, that I think is one of the first things that's important, because if we become overly stressed, or if we enter into the tunnel vision, we can no longer see the solutions. All we see is what's right in front of us, which is what's wrong. Whereas when we stay calm, we reduce the tunnel vision and we can look for the solutions. And so we end up where we look, and we also can look for our green door. We can look for our solution. We can look for positive. We can look for good. We can look for our future. And so when we do that, we can move forward towards that, and we can get past the challenges that we're facing, even calamities. Okay. And then in addition, when we become relaxed, when we become calm, when we become grounded, we can let go of our problems. We can be free. We can release them. They're not going to be gone for good, okay? But they can be behind us. They can be part of our past. Next slide. So how do we do this? We can learn to be mindful of our feelings. We can allow ourselves to feel feelings. We can allow ourselves to even feel conflicted about different things. We can hold different conflicting emotions. We can be happy and scared and sad all at once. It's one of the wonders and marvels of the human being. So we can also be prepared to face stress and frustration and challenges, but we can also have a set of responses that we keep ready at our fingertips. We can work on pausing and learning how to catch ourselves. So when we practice mindfulness, when we practice relaxation techniques, and when we see the physiological changes in biofeedback, or when we see the benefit from using the BPM or RESWELL, or from the photobiomodulation, we can allow ourselves to become more aware of what is going on inside, but we can also then look for an alternative. And that allows us also to be a positive role model for our family members, children, friends, spouses, even parents. We can be a positive influence for them as well. We can then help ourselves. We can help our family because we can feel less powerless and we can take action. And the moment we take action, we feel the power. We feel control. We feel hopeful. And we can make growth opportunities out of challenges. And they can be growth opportunities for ourselves, for our family, even for our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, question answer now. Anybody have a question? Don't be shy.
I have one. I really appreciate the overview of all of the different methods. Have you so far seen more response in one bio method than another, or is it really dependent on the person, the circumstance? Have any come out as like leaders of this generally always works the best?
So I don't think that I can say that there's one thing that's always going to work the best based on my own experience and also based on the research. I think it really is going to vary from person to person and also the situation. For example, I have clients that use, the binaural pulse modulator for pain, and it's quite effective for them, and they use it in my office, and they use it twice a week. Whereas I have other clients who really do not enjoy using it, even with the bone conduction headset. Okay, they just don't like the sounds. And on the flip side, where they have had positive, results from listening to the healing music, biofeedback I've used kind of in conjunction with many different things, and I kind of alter which method of biofeedback, whether I'm looking at heart rate variability or surface EMG, okay, for an individual, particularly if they have a particular pattern of like carrying their shoulders up like in a guard position. So giving that person awareness of what's happening. But I think it's really dependent case to case. And I actually myself haven't had the opportunity to use the photobiomodulation. I hope one day to be able to use it. I think that would be can be a very useful tool, and it would really maybe direct some of the interventions. But again, that's a growing area that I think is up and coming.
May I say something about that?
Absolutely.
We show you at the beginning that different part of the brain, you hear, you see. So if you have an intervention, which is to see, to hear, to think, you are entering by the window, by the chimney, by the door, by everywhere, and you have a much rapid and strong effect. A. B. The different modalities are good. All those little instruments are in the area of $600. Okay, the sound are in the area. The music, $20-30. The photo biomodulation, $25,000. So it's more for clinic. The photo biomodulation is more manipulation at the brain level. So you use it when the brain have a conclusion, when the brain is swallowing. You work basically to improve the hardware. Because if the hardware is not functioning well, then the software will not operate. But then comes the other method that we were speaking with Dr. Wallace about positive psychology, about imaging, about all the other things we are talking about, or psychosomatic movement. This is to connect and operate better the brain at the level of an upgrade of the software. So it's two different things, but you need to have a better brain physiologically heal or more intact in order to be able to operate the software upgrade of the program, which could be psychology or the other system. But at the same time, we have discovered in our group that the fact we use multimodal, multisensorial, we have much more results. And that's easy to understand because by using different systems, you force the mind and the brain to adapt. And what we want to develop for resilience is something we call neuroplasticity. And by changing the different mode, then there is an adaptation because humans are adaptable if you put them in a condition and to be willing to be adaptable. And that's why you need to get them out of their tunnel vision effect. So, sorry, long answer to your questions. I just wanted to correct one point of Dr. Wallach. He was showing that to have social interaction is very important to be resilient. Little point, not by internet, because then we go in hyperconnectivity, and then we go in the fake news, and then we go on the dependence of the internet, and it is proven by fMRI, by all type of imaging of the brain, that there is some parts of the brain which become inactivated. Basically, using internet is making some part of the brain to become inactive.
Right, to shut down. There was one thing I wanted to add in also. For anybody who is interested in technology or is hearing about other novel technologies that we haven't addressed or talked about, I'd be happy to hear more about them. I'm interested, I'm curious. I'll start Googling them and looking for published studies on them. And if somebody's looking to validate their technology, that's also something that we have an area to try to do as well, to try to do a research study, even a pilot study, and to try to find ways to show if something is, really valid. Again, the goal is to only encourage validated technologies for therapeutic use and to provide that benefit. And there's lots of new things. Technology is constantly growing. And I hope one day even like the photobiomodulation won't only be for $25,000 in an office, but even then, even if it was $1,000, I would still want somebody to first use it in an office. And $1,000 is still, I think, very expensive. But it will come down. EEG used to be thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, and now you can get hats that have EEG sensors built in them to control little flying devices that you can play with, that kids play with for toys, and it's training their brain functioning. So if anybody has anything, or if they know of something, or if they learn of something, please feel free to be in touch with myself. I'd be interested in hearing more about it. And if they're interested in researching, we can try to find a way to collaborate.
Yeah, because Dr. Wallat is leading in our RESWELL VUCAH, the group for technology. And the idea is many technology, for example, validation of a technology of FDA in America, you are talking in several hundred of thousands of dollars, if not millions. The idea with our group is to bring new promising technology quick to the market, eventually to help them to find investors. But if we found something interesting, our group, our VUCAH RESWELL group, can help to get the world on the map, and to help some useful, innovative technology to be able to develop and not to die. Because there is many technology we are great, but they don't have the money and they die. So the idea is to know about it, help us to know more about it, but also to validate. Anybody else have a question?
8-track tapes and Betamax. They were better quality.
Yep.
Anybody?
I have a question. Yeah, I have a question. Can we go back to one of your first slides where you explain the the VUCAH arena in physiological and psychological terms?
Sure.
one.
Okay.
Now I'm
go
going to
ahead.
come at this from economics. So the economics of growth. Why is a government going to be interested in this? Why is a corporate going to be interested in this? And all of those are absolutely brilliant, because I can sit here as an HR manager and say, you know, personally, I've a lot of anxiety. I've got too much on my, on my plate. I'm asked to do too many things, but I have to do them because everyone else is doing them. So there's this cycle of the internal talk that actually is saying, okay, can you now explain to me how any one of these effects can be improved using your technology or process or what have you? And it comes back down to a question about diagnostic. So can we turn this into a valuable diagnostic that anyone in business, I'm particularly focused on the business side, forget the social side for the moment, anyone in business can say, answer the question on a scale of 1 to 10, I can come up with 6, and then 5 for another, and 8 for another. And I get an overall score, which basically says, I'm in the red zone, I need help. I'm in the blue zone, things are okay, but it's not quite hunky-dory, or I'm in the amber zone or the green zone. Is there a diagnostic that we can come up with that relatively simple to put together and easy to apply literally globally?
So I think that there are already some things that we might be overloading and overlapping with. For example, the PHQ-9, which is a 9-item questionnaire. There's a longer one which has 30 items, if I remember correctly. It's the self-report inventory, and that we can really use to tap in. It's not going to capture all of these. We can use this to then create our own. The issue with creating our own survey is validation. So on the other hand, it's almost easier to take something that already exists that's brief and quick, and then apply that, and then use the logic of, okay, well, for example, using the BPM, that has been shown to reduce anxiety and stress and PTSD, which it comes across on some of the psychological on multiple areas. We can use the music to reduce areas of hyperactivation and not sleeping properly. We can use biofeedback as well to help people become more self-aware and to teach them self-control. So we can definitely use something towards the business side of things. I think that we could use a survey and then also show how it maps up with different interventions.
But
Yeah,
we have
go
a
ahead.
group. We have a group working on that. And in fact, the group is here. Anna Jacome, who is Anna Jacome, where is Anna? Yeah, I don't see Anna here. She should be, because she's on the page before. In Ecuador, she's working, Anna, it's new, she volunteered after. She is working on looking at all the different resilience tests and evaluation in order to see which one is the best we could use. And we can also analyze each element, because if you don't have trust, you already have one of those problems. If
Yep.
you feel external locus of control, if you are depressed, if you don't sleep well, there is different indicator which shows not one by one, but when they are combined, that you do have one of those conditions. But when we come back to this thing, you see that, for example, the tough one is a burnout, but the burnout is the result of uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. And
Yeah.
that's a burnout. And that was creating also not just burnout, but also suicide during COVID. So we have more information, because since COVID, we know more about VUCA. And there is a lot of scientific paper that we have been reviewing with Salome since VUCA about the scientific report. So it's coming. We need to dig into it. But yes, the idea, what you propose, is to have a quick and dirty scale. Do you feel this? Do you feel that? Do you have this? Do you still feel stressed when you are out of your job, when you come home? That bingo, we know that there is a problem. And then we can have that. And then we can refine because we can have better and better questionnaire. When we have more money, when the foundation can give us more money, we can develop our own tool with artificial intelligence. We can develop predictable tool because there is a difference between tool to measure, tool to predict.
Yeah.
They can tell us exactly what area. But one of the tests we have on our website, which is a test of procrastination. That's common on that increase, but you have different type of procrastination. But when you see the different type of procrastination of somebody, you start to know which is the leading problem. So there is ways to develop it, but we have the knowledge. As a group of psychologists, we know how to recognize, but we can put it together as a, I would say, some rules to see or some question to evaluate. We can say, call it as probe. You agree with that term, Joe? We can have some calibrated probe, and then that give a good idea. Another
And
question.
that's exactly what they need. They need that calibration so that we need to gain their trust. And we gain their trust by offering something that they can quickly assess themselves.
Yeah.
As an individual or as a small group. So
yeah.
the more we can do that, the better. And I like the fact that Joe said there's things out there already. Yeah, I'm a great believer. If it ain't bust, don't fix it. So we utilize what's there currently. We may rebadge it, as our survey based upon whatever, then at least we're getting the message out there.
Psychologically, all stress are not the same. Psychologically,
yeah,
but
yeah.
No, not that one. I go in the slide of Joe. But all stress end up to have a similar picture where the prefrontal cortex is inactive. This is the stage where you are in TVE and you are reptilian brain. And that's what you are when you are in burnout, when you are in PTSD. So we know what is a result of some condition, and we don't need to get an fMRI to confirm. We know that that's done. I know somebody here today who had a burnout. He did not know about it. And I spoke with that person, and I say, wait a minute, you have a burnout. I have a burnout. Yes, you have a burnout. And you know what? If you don't do something, you will lose your job and your marriage. And we put a group of intervention in 1 month. He was in a better shape and he was able to be reconstructed. But his company, he told us that his company, they have nothing to help people with that type of problem. They don't help for psychological problems. They eventually say, okay, you can see a psychologist, but they confuse all type of stress. They go in a method which will take a year, at least. Our goal in our group is to put somebody back quickly as possible. We work on functionality. The other people try to repair the problem. We are not. We work backward design. So we are working on making people to be functional again. That's a different approach.
Mm-hmm.
Joe?
No, I think that the idea of shifting also from the broken Western medicine model, which is treatment of things that are wrong, waiting for people to be sick, is a huge challenge. I think that the shift here is towards prevention, resilience, well-being, okay? And I think that's really what we're talking about, is trying to give people the ability to avoid feeling overworked, overstressed. I have to keep up with somebody else. It's like, hold on, no, I need to have that balance and talking, even feeling the ability to be assertive and tell their manager, I have, with confidence, I have too much on my plate right now. Okay. And so that would be a huge shift. So, but that's taking back towards that internal locus of control.
And by the way, you are not born with resilience. Resilience is a skill you develop. And that's where it's interesting for our group, because we develop resilience to what? To the stressful society, to the uncertainty, to this, to that, the element of VUCAH, which, by the way, did not exist before. So that's why parenting have changed. That's why parenting actually means two things: taking care of your children, but as children, taking care of the parents. And that is something also new. So the concept we have in VUCAH is to not apply all solution to a new problem, and to look at it as a new problem. Salome, I think it's your turn to speak about that.
Yes, so basically we already touched this topic, the importance of internal locus of control when it comes to our resilience to VUCAH world. And so in these images, the evoke images, we can see that as long as we realize that there is a binary choice in front of us and that we have a choice in general, and also as far as internal locus of control is still there, then we can develop the resilience. And when the resilience is low and when our reaction to stress is purely biological and our rational brain is not involved, then we go to external locus of control that increases the levels of the stress that we have. So these are one of the major aspects when it comes to our research and to the importance of increasing the resilience, where these methods that were described earlier can be really helpful in that case.
And in that binary choice, it's very, very interesting, because when the people have a problem, they don't see a choice, and they are in tunnel vision. They are in tunnel vision, and by not seeing the choice, they are in external locus of control because it comes to them. So the first element to teach people is to practice internal locus of control and to prevent tunnel vision effect. When you start to see the problem and you don't see a solution, you are dysfunctional. And that's where we can help at the level of the corporation, of the people. So everybody should go on this link here that you have also in our website. I will share again with you on the WhatsApp group. But you have 3 different sounds that Dr. Wallach has described. They really work. And it's available and it's free for you, your friend, your family. Try it. It really works well. And if you don't try, you will never say, yeah, it works, and recommend it to people. But our group has the authorization to distribute for free 8 million downloads. And I'm very surprised because we have been promoting it in Israel. Very few people download because they don't believe it can help them.
Yeah.
And the problem to change is not to try, is to change the way you think. So the people don't know, they don't try, they don't do, because humans are creatures of habit. So that's where, so if you can help us to circulate those sound, it will help a lot of people, but you should try it for you and your family. It really works. Before we close, I would like to ask Paula Felicia de Candia, who is joining us from Canada, who is now new in the group, to have 2 minutes to introduce herself.
Wow, there's no pressure, right? Hi, everyone.
No, everybody get 2 minutes. So that's the rule.
I'm the first. I didn't, sorry, I joined late. I was busy with patients. I'm seeing everybody virtually lately. Ever since COVID, I've had that opportunity. It's hard to condense 25 years of practice in 2 minutes speech, but I'm a homeopath by trade. However, life has brought me into different ups and downs, and I have developed and studied and worked on dealing with trauma and anything that's trauma. And then because you guys are here and you're in that field, you understand what I mean by that. I don't think there is one person on this planet that is not traumatized by something. And I've learned more than anything lately that trauma, we used to think that it's something that is done to you, that it's unjust. But the truth is, trauma can derive from not receiving, especially growing up, that which you, in your mind, perceive that you needed to receive. So I'm very passionate about working with women and their families to restore their well-being from the inside out. I don't believe in the Western medicine approach at all. I've been exposed to homeopathic medicine since I was 12, and I have seen the magic in front of my eyes. I have people coming into the office depleted of energy, not knowing who they are, what they want, what they're doing, if they are doing the right thing, stressed, and PTSD is huge. Depression is huge. Addiction is huge. So I find that in my practice, I pretty much come back to the heart, come back to understanding themselves, breathing, tapping, movement. I used to be a professional ballet dancer, so I come from understanding that movement is important for the whole being. And also I work with, I do this blood test. I don't know if you guys are aware of it. It's called live blood analysis. And that shows me on a dark field microscopy what's happening internally at the cellular level when it comes to the terrain of in the blood and the cells. So I'm noticing a lot of interchangeable changes happening derived from the gut health, from digestion, from absorption, all kinds of things. Like, I don't even know what to say first, because I combine so many different aspects of different medicines. Like I do mindful meditation, I do movement, I do tapping, I do homeopathy, of course. I do a system of medicine that it's called the body talk. And it's not the same with, there is another one in US that they are talking about body something, I forget how it's called, in which I become the translator of your body energetically. So I work a lot with energy. So you don't need to tell me anything about yourself. I can look at you and tell you things about yourself that you'll be in awe. I don't know how that happens. It's developed. I think it's a gift given from generations and generations. I can't explain energy, but I can guarantee you that if you give me a chance, I can actually prove it. I've done a little bit of work with Dr. Abraham here, I think once or twice. And I think he's realized at that point how I kind of work, and didn't make sense, but kind of makes sense. So I don't know if I summed it. I
Very
come
good.
from
Very good.
so many.
No, it was important because as we record, we are taking the snippet about everybody, and that's the way we introduce our group to other people. Anybody have anything else to say? Salome, Salome 1, Salome 2, Anna, Neville, Joe, Manana.
Yes, I would like to thank you, and I would like to tell our presenter today that I'm impressed. Coming from neuropsychological field, it was very pleasant for me to listen what you were talking about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank
It
you
was
so
my
much.
pleasure, and I hope it was Salome's pleasure also. It was really nice spending time with you all. One day, I look forward to us all actually getting together, not meeting on Zoom.
Yeah, we don't need a computer for interpersonal relation. By the way, Salome, Manana, Salome 1, Salome 2, Manana, Paula is also coming from Eastern Europe. She's from Romania. So she have an idea of what goes over there. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Next month, Salome, you are ready for next month?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, you seem very enthusiastic. Okay, thank you
Well,
so
I
much.
want to say one more thing. Thank you all for doing the work you're doing. It's not just for what's happening in Europe or in that part of the world, but I think it's at large. It's tapping into the metrics of our being. So it's changing the way we do things, the way we live our life, the way we live this, will make this world for, and we pave the path for the generations to come. So thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, everybody, be
Nice
well.
to meet you all.
See you next month. Bye-bye.